Thank you, choir, for that beautiful anthem. It lifts our hearts. A wedding in Chicago. It was a wonderful wedding. We took a train. We thought we might want an adventure. Riding a train is almost always an adventure, either a good one or a bad one. Mark Twain was on a train once, and he said it was going exceedingly slowly. He said it was going so slowly that they took the cow catcher off the front, you know, that pointy thing that used to be on trains for knocking the cow out of the way. They took the cow catcher off the front and put it on the back, okay? He said because at the speed they were going, there was no chance of running over a cow, but there was nothing to keep a cow from climbing on at the rear. So riding a train can be an adventure. We enjoyed it. It's kind of rough. I mean, the rails are not good until you get to Chicago, where they've spent several $1 billion to fix the rails and set them in concrete. The rest of the trip is kind of like a boat on the ocean, but it's okay. Sometimes slams you around, especially in Arkansas. Arkansas is rough. I did quote Mark Twain to somebody who was passing me in the passage as I was going to the dinner car. As I was being thrown from side to side, I said, "Pity the poor sailor out on a night like this." Actually, our trip there was kind of ruined. The ones going, by the way, were Jim and Linda, parents of one of the brides. They're sitting right over here. And me and my sister and our good friend, the Reverend Harry C. Meissner. And in the car that we were in, there was a problem because with the venting system, so that every time the car in front of us, someone flushed, we got the full smell. And you know, on a train, you've got quite a few people, and they have to flush about every 5 minutes. And sometimes you get one flush right after another, and that pours in. My sister solved this problem. She had a sample bottle, fairly big, some perfume, and so she poured it all over her car. People who were outside and the train was passing must have been confused. I can't tell whether that smells like sewage or Blue Waltz number 5. So that was an adventure. The cab ride from the train station in Chicago to our hotel on the Magic Mile. Chicago is beautiful, by the way. It has another kind of reputation, but it's really a beautiful city. That cab ride was also an extraordinary experience. That cab driver could pull into spaces between cars that were bumper to bumper. There was no place that he could not go at top speed. There was no pedestrian in Chicago who was anywhere near that cab who was truly secure in life and limb. I've never taken a ride like that before. He either knew what he was doing or he didn't care. I don't know which it was. And at the hotel, the girls, Julie and Jenna, for the next few days, they had to spend a lot of time taking care of the old people. The old people being us. They were there to help us get checked in and from time to time help us get a cab somewhere or an Uber. I never quite got the Uber thing down. I tried before we left. Fortunately, John has a regular Uber. John, being a friend of Julie's and now really a friend of both of the girls, John is 66, and John came out when he was quite young, many years ago, and it was hard on him. Hard with his family, hard in the world. And I think that's probably why he has the job he has now, which is working with a lot of celebrities to do big shows, big celebrity shows, to raise money for homeless teenagers who have been kicked out of their homes by their parents because of their sexual orientation. And he raises money to help those kids. It's a beautiful thing for him to do. He's a beautiful person and quite delightful. He got the cab for us to go to the wedding, actually an Uber. He has an Uber account, so he got an Uber driver for us. And all the way over, we talked about the ways of the world. We talked about the gay issue and the church and Lily Tomlin, whom he knows. His cousin, an older woman, older than he, whom he actually thinks of as an aunt because she's so much older. She said, you know how somebody who are not really aunt or uncle will be called aunt or uncle because they were older. At the wedding, I was, in fact, Uncle Max. Yes, I was. Anyway, John's aunt, who had gone through 9/11 and had been in one of those buildings that came down, after that she's not been quite the same. And sometime back he decided that he would cheer her up, make her feel better by letting her talk to her hero, who is Lily Tomlin. So he called, he was there with her, and he called up Lily on the phone, and they handed the phone to his cousin, and he said, somebody wants to talk to you. Well, it wasn't a minute before they were just carrying on, and his cousin was saying, hey girl, how are you doing? I hear you're turning 80 years old. Well, the next time he saw his cousin told him, she said, well, Lily's called me twice. He was astounded at the graciousness and the big heart of Lily Tomlin. And he talked to Lily about it, and she said, oh yes, I've called her. He said, I love to talk to her. She said, you know that accent? Said, I love to hear that accent. Well, you know, Lily is a mimic, and she would be interested in anyone's accent. She also sent a present to the cousin, something with butterflies, because she found out the cousin liked butterflies. People who are just kind and generous and gracious. Well, the Uber driver got fully into the discussion about the gay issue, and as we were getting out of the car, and she was listening to all of John's stories. And as we were getting out of the car, just before, I said, listen, I have to tell you this. You both, she was a younger lady, you both look like and you sound exactly like, this story is not going to have any point. It's a comedian. Wanda Sykes. I said, yes, you sound just like Wanda Sykes. She was delighted by that, and she announced as we got out of the car, I have loved this ride. Well, we were heading for the wedding, and it was a good long walk for somebody who has no knees. Walked along the pier. It was going to be on a boat. It was on a boat. We had all three, I started to say tiers, but I think you call them decks. All three decks of the boat. The wedding was on the top one, although rain was threatening and there was a lot of confusion in the background. We never knew about whether to have it up there or down below. But they were all set up down below. The bottom was going to be the big lunch afterward, and then you had the deck that was just for the reception in the middle. And they finally decided that they were going to go ahead with it outside. The girls were married under a chuppah. It's a kind of a tent-like thing over the top with friends holding the poles on each side. It's a Jewish thing because Julie is Jewish. And I do recall that the first time she ate at our house, we forgot and served ham. I was in consternation when we remembered that. I called Julie. I said, honey, I am so sorry. She said, it's all right. I'm not that observant. She eats ham. And don't tell anybody, but at the family dinner on Friday night, her mama ate pulled pork. Well, her daddy's a little more observant, and he didn't. Well, we all gathered. There were 100 people on the top deck of the ship, and they were up there under the hoopah or chuppah. I'm not sure which to call it. What? Okay. Whatever you all are saying, I'm going to go with it. All right. And the aisles were not quite wide enough for Julie to come down with her mama and daddy on each side, and for Jenna to come down with her mama and daddy on each side. So they had 3 people kind of trying to go sideways to get down the aisle. And already I found that I was in tears because I've known Jenna all of her life, and this was such an extraordinary and wonderful experience, and I've loved Julie ever since I've known her, so it was really a wonderful thing. And I can't cry at weddings because I'm usually doing them, but of course I couldn't do this wedding. They wanted me to do this wedding, but I couldn't do this wedding because I'm a Methodist minister. So being a Methodist minister ought to mean that you could do a wedding, but our church is, at the moment, rather primitive and still, to some extent, living in the dark ages. That will change because the world has changed. So I couldn't do the wedding, and let it be clear, lest someone, the gendarmes from the conference come in and grab my robe and take it off of me. I didn't do the wedding. I just had a reading in the wedding. Okay, I read 13 Corinthians, and that's all I did. There were a number of especially lovely things in the wedding. Among the things they did, they had Todd. Todd and Becky were the ones who were officiating. Neither one of them was a minister, except Todd did get a license online before the wedding. You can be ordained from the Universal Church of God or whatever it is. And you've been able to do that for a long time. And he had ordered his license. In fact, he closed the service by saying, by the power vested in me by the internet, I pronounce you, etc., etc. Well, anyway, the girls had included in their service the reading from attorney the Anthony Kennedy of the majority opinion in Hodges versus Obergefell, the Supreme Court decision that allowed them to get married. I had never heard it before, never read it before. Jenna says she cannot read it actually without crying at one point. Here's the portion that was read. No union is more profound than marriage, for it embodies the highest ideals of love, fidelity, devotion, sacrifice, and family. In forming a marital union, 2 people become something greater than once they were. Our blessed Lord said in marriage, 2 people become one flesh. As some of the parties in these cases demonstrate, marriage embodies a love that may endure even past death. Now this is Anthony Kennedy on the Supreme Court talking. It would misunderstand these men and women to say they disrespect the idea of marriage. Their plea is that they do in fact respect it so deeply that they seek to find its fulfillment for themselves. Their hope is not to be condemned to live in loneliness, excluded from one of civilization's oldest institutions. They ask for equal dignity in the eyes of the law. The Constitution grants them this right. Now, Jenna had told me, thinking I might miss my cue, that the Anthony Kennedy reading was my cue. They only reminded me of that 6 times. So I stood up and offered my part. I talked about the fact that Jim and I have known each other for over 50 or 60 years, whatever it is. And I said, of course, that means that Jim is quite old. And I said that St. Paul was not right about everything. But he was right on about this. And then I read these words. If I speak in the tongues of men and of angels, but do not have love, I am a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. If I give away my body that it may offer to sacrifice and do not have love, I am nothing. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love is not envious or boastful or arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice in wrongdoing, but rejoices in the truth. It bears all things, it believes all things, it hopes all things, and endures all things. There are 3 things that last forever. There are these: faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love. Well, now, I hate to tell you, but my reading was just about the hit of the show. Julie came up and said, Max, everybody loved that. Young and old have come up. And then I realized probably 2/3 of the people there were Jewish. They had never heard that before. I got credit for the Apostle Paul's words. And then I realized how powerful the Apostle Paul's words are. We've heard them so many times. They don't touch us in the heart the way they should. They may not speak with the power, but to much of the audience there, they spoke with an extraordinary power about love. And love is indeed what this service was all about. It's what Anthony Kennedy was saying marriage is all about. It is about love. The Greeks had a lot of words for love. Well, they had 4. One of the words not even used in the Bible that is pertinent to marriage. There are 3 kinds of love involved in a marriage. There is, first of all, eros, which is the physical attraction between 2 people. And that's a part of a relationship. That's part of a married life. And then there is philia, which is friendship. It's very clear that these 2 are the best friends that they have in the world. And then there is agape, that all-giving, all-forgiving, all-gracious love, which is the word for love that is used throughout the New Testament. Agape. And all 3 of these, the part that people offer themselves and the part that God does in their lives, these are what make up a marriage. It's all about love. I assume that Julie and Jenna were responsible for these words. I think they wrote the script for their wedding. But it's an extraordinary statement which Todd read as the wedding started. I'm going to read these words to you, and these come to you from the heart of Jenna and Julie. You don't have to have a ceremony to have a marriage. So why a ceremony? Why this moment? Because despite of all of our differences, love is what we all share. It's the great unifier. Our one universal truth. No matter who we are, where we've come from, what we believe, we know this one thing. Love is what we're doing right. That's why you both, as he spoke to Jenna and Julie, are standing here. And that's why you, guests, are here to witness this special moment. We have all loved in our lifetimes, and in this moment we're reminded that the ability to love is the very best part of our humanity. And that brings us all here for Julie and Jenna. That's why Todd and his partner are together. That's why people are come together in love. It was an extraordinary occasion in many ways. There we were, Jew, Gentile, gay, straight, white, black, and all united in one heart, and that was the Lord's work. Where love is, things are right. Where people are allowed to love, things are right. The church cannot stay where it is now, the Methodist Church, the United Methodist Church, because that's not where love is. That's not where kindness is. That's not where generosity is. And that's what the church is all about. So it cannot stay here. You may think, well, there's some other denomination over there. They'll always... No, they won't. The movement of the Spirit is in the direction of grace and unity. At the reception on the lower deck after the wedding service, Julie's father, Jim spoke and said a few words, and Julie's father said a few words, actually in the reverse order of that. And Julie's father said that when she announced to him many years ago her orientation, he said, well, he immediately thought there are a couple of good things about this. He said, first of all, I'll never have to make a speech after her wedding. And I'll never have to put out all that money it takes for a wedding. And he said neither of those turned out to be true. I wish you could have been there, and I hope that through this sermon you may have a feel for it, for what it's to be like in a group of people. Well, we'll use Paul's words again, where there's neither Jew nor Gentile, nor male, nor female, nor slave, nor free, where God is working and blessing. And where I just had a small part, Paul and I, because the United Methodist Church isn't quite there yet. But we will be. Be confident in that. Know where God is leading us. And here's another thing you need to know about God. God knows what God is doing, and God never fails. So let's just not just touch the hem of his garment. Let's grab onto it and let him haul us wherever he wants to haul us. I give thanks for the chance to have been at this lovely wedding. I give thanks for the two who were united in marriage at this wedding. And I give thanks for God's love in their lives, in our lives, because, as Julie and Jenna said, this is what it's all about. No, go beyond that. As our blessed Lord said, love is what this is all about. Join me in prayer. God of grace and glory, we are your grateful people because we are the recipients of that love which you pour out on us from moment to moment. Forgive us that we forget, and help us to remember that we are loved, we are forgiven, and by the power of your grace, we last forever. In Jesus' name, amen. I do want to tell you that on the trip home, there was no sewage. And it was a bumpy ride, but a good one. Lord be praised. We're going to sing a song now that declares that we want to love the way Jesus loved. If you will stand, yes, I'm sorry to make you stand. I always hate to stand, and I love sitting. And the older I get, the truer this is. But if you are up to it, and if you're really not tired, I'm putting these ifs in, I'm serious about them. Will you stand as we sing together? And Christy is on that piano back there. Lord, we're going to declare to him right now, Lord, I want to be a Christian.